I'm an information IT risk and information security guy. And innovation and convenience and security aren't really good bedfellows. So you guys are coming in, how we want to do things, and typically information security is seen as that constrainer. Well, you can't do that. That's risky. You don't want to be doing that. The interesting debate about data as well is EU and EU compliance puts data in a different world. So how do I use that data and control that data? So who's fed up with the cookie links that come on? So everybody, there's a pop-up about cookies because they're tracking your data. These guys want to use that data to make the consumer experience more focused around you as individuals. But from an information security perspective and from a threat perspective, those are changing worlds and often conflicting worlds. I've got about 2 minutes to keep your interest, and that's the typical way that most people present. So I'll speak to. I think I've got about 10 minutes. 2 minutes is typically the attention span that you'll give me. So I'm going to say the upfront things. So the world is changing. The consumer is king. Everybody in this room has an opinion and now has a voice. Whether that opinion is right, whether that opinion has a social conscience is debatable, but they have the right to express it. Whether it's 140 characters or not, they can express that opinion. Therefore, the consumer and that consumer voice is very powerful against business. The other thing that I'd like to bring out is identity. Identity is the new currency on the internet. Whether it's your brand identity or whether it's your personal identity, the threats against that are growing. And the threatscape against your identity and your personal privacy are constantly changing. The other thing is that we people, as humans, are the weakest link in any information security architecture. We're a trusting people. We trust that when people call us up and they say, well, we've seen some fraudulent activity on your account, you say, well, oh, can I check your details? And we tell them. We're trusting. If I phoned you up and said, send me some personal pictures of you, you wouldn't do it. But because we're trusting in different ways, hackers and criminals and cyber criminals are exploiting that inbuilt trust. And they're exploiting that inbuilt trust around how we exploit data. The thing that we've got to do as information security professionals and as we innovate is start to embed security into what we do, to change the way that we actually use our technology, to embed information security and technologies into the way that we work. So it's not constraining what we do, but it's enabling what we do. A show of hands, and it's interesting when we look and talk about banks and online banks and trusts, who has changed their bank in the last 5 years? So the way that we look at things and the way that we actually appreciate what we've done, that's probably about a quarter. If I asked, we did a recent survey around sort of trust in banking and how people hold their personal data. A quarter of this audience who have changed their banks recently actually don't trust anything on the internet. They don't trust anybody to hold their personal data. And that's not just a generation thing. That's for everybody. It's not all like old guys like me who are generally untrusting. It's for the whole of that generation. And it was interesting debate around Amazon, and Amazon are building trust. The majority of people who do things on the internet don't trust those institutes to hold their data and manage their personal data. That needs to change if we're going to innovate in that environment. How do we do more? What do you think is the number one technology that people use to protect their personal data? What do they use? Passwords, the lady said. So the majority of people who don't trust things on the internet, don't trust organizations to hold their data, protect that data with a password. Who's fed up with using passwords on the internet? It went from 4 characters, one guy at the back, 4 characters, majority. I probably should have showed a hand, and everybody's hands would go up. The majority of organizations protect their data using usernames and passwords. We went from 4 characters to 6 characters to 8 characters, uppercase, lowercase, alphanumeric, all sorts of things to try and increase the strength of that password. organizations asked you to change that password, how many days typically would you be asked in an organization to change your password? 30 days. I say we're getting some response. So typically, why was that done? 2 years ago, to crack an 8-character password, let's first of all, how many combinations of an 8-character password are there? Any idea? It's bigger than our national debt. That helps you. There's roughly around 2.2 trillion combinations of an 8-character password. Upper, lowercase, alphanumeric characters, special characters. So a fairly large number. 2 years ago, the computing power to actually crack that 8-character password took over 30 days. So, change your password every 30 days, kept you reasonably secure. Any idea what it takes to crack an 8-character password today? If you go out on that floor, there'll be a there's a graphics card in someone's computer out there that can crack your 8-character password. That's over 2.2 trillion combinations in less than a day. So how is that going to affect your security? We have to start thinking differently around how we embed security, how we innovate in that world, because passwords no longer cut it. We have to think about how we take our personal responsibility and how we share data. Interesting debate about how you focus on the consumer and how you innovate on that consumer. But that's great when we're open and sharing. And that's great when everything's okay. Yeah, it's nice that I get Tesco's sending me vouchers to buy fresh fruit because I'm a very healthy guy. It's nice that I get that little bit of consumer focus when I go on Amazon and say, well, actually, people who bought that book are quite interested in this book. Very nice, very convenient. But what happens if they then start sending me things about my health? Am I so interested in that? Where did they get that information from? How do we start using that information in a productive way? So data and data analysis can be used in both ways. And if I look at it, the sort of changing threatscape and what we're hearing about, say, over the news over the weekend around PRISM and the open sharing of information, the majority of us don't care. The majority of us don't take any care of our personal information and the way that we interact online until it's too late. But how do we control that? How, as innovators, do we start embedding security into that? We need to put risk in context. We need to understand what the real risks are when we use information. Contactless payments. I think, again, if you go out on the floor, contactless payments, great innovation. Superb for my son at his university. He is constantly losing his credit cards. So something that allows him to put a contactless payment on a badge or on his watch, which he won't lose, or on his mobile phone, which he certainly won't use, as a good innovation. But from an information security perspective, you'll always hear, well, if you stand too close to the contact, it will make fraudulent payments. Minute risk. We've got to understand what the risks are. We've got to put those risks in context and then look at technology to enable us to do those things. Whereas information security guys, we're always used to saying, well, don't do that. You need to change that. You can't do it that way. We've got to rethink how we do that and start to embed security into that, putting risk in context, understanding where those real risks are, and then using information technology and risk in context to enable us to interact online in a better way, to have that better consumer experience, to open up and use mobile devices in a much more convenient way. When we look at the challenges and the way that we actually look at information security, we've got to start thinking differently as organizations to understand how the consumer interacts with us online. What are they actually looking for and how we use their data? And then use technology to embed controls in that. So, when I look at the challenges that we go through on this, We look at the way that we actually want organizations to work, and certainly at Integralis, when we look at some of that context that allows us to look at information security in a different way, actually looking at risks in a different way, we must understand, whereas humans, we actually do things differently. We are a trusting breed. And as I said, if I phoned you up and said to you, tell me we've noticed some fraudulent activity on your account, you'd be naturally trusting in the way that I'd actually talk to you about that. The fact that I'm standing here has built some level of trust. How do you build that trust in a virtual world? How do I identify you as an individual in a virtual world when I can't see you? There are technologies that allow us to build up that profile. Technologies that use data to profile how we look. So rather than using a username and password, we could use combinations of lesser informational tokens to actually build up that profile. So could I use my Facebook login with the fact that I bought some fruit from Tesco's to the fact that I've actually bought some petrol to build up a profile that I am who I say I am? So we build up lower tokens to actually prove an identity. And that's what we're looking at in terms of how do we start building up other tokens of data that allow us to prove we are who we say you are. And we can do that much more in this social collaborational way. But we've also got to educate users in the fact that they're also responsible. They're also responsible for the information security that they have and how they interact with systems online. There is not enough liability on the individual to change their habits. So generally, we have to start persuading everybody to do the right thing. So who shreds their documents? Well, actually not the majority, which I thought was the majority. Even my mum shreds documents. Has no idea why she does it, but it's in her conscience that says, well, I should shred my documents. We need that same level of consciousness as we do everything else online. How we share information, how we use information needs to be brilliant. So we're sort of coming up to our tea break, and I like to be a little bit interactive as well. So I'd like you to get to all stand up. And you can trust me when I say that I asked you at the start of this to turn off your mobile phones. Who, and I can trust you because I can see you all, who actually turned off their mobile phone? Who actually went to their mobile phone and turned it off? Not a single one of you. Fantastic. So my instructions and my words were interpreted in different ways. Who, again, be honest, as we're coming up to the tea break and I want to get this active. Who, be honest again, I can trust you, can't I? Who actually checked their mobile phone to say it was on silent or was on vibrate? Who actually did that? You can probably sit down or go for coffee. So there's a few of you. So there's always an interpretation. You can all sit down now if you want to. There's always an interpretation on instructions. There's always a different way of looking at that. And that's what, as information security, we have to understand. You will always interpret things in a different way. And we have to then start building that in the way that we actually innovate in security. Thank you very much.